Welcome everyone to Melfuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Dexter Resurrection, episode 3. It's called Backseat Driver. So spoilers for the episode as always. This is a Patreon sponsor review, so thank you very much to Cindy for picking the show. So we kind of wrapped up the Dark Passenger story this episode, which I'm not super surprised by. I wasn't necessarily expecting him to be this season-long plot, especially since we've been building up this Thurman stuff, who gets her one scene this episode. Batista gets 2 scenes, though. Batista's a 2-scene boy this week. But, yeah, there's obviously advancements with the various stories, the Harrison, the murder investigation at the hotel, and then, of course, Dexter going after, and by the end of the episode, killing the killer, killing the serial killer who's killing all the rideshare drivers. So there's there's moments here or there that are kinda darkly funny, which I guess is what Dexter was always going for, and at its best is doing well. But then there's other things that are really frustrating to me, or that I think are stupid and try hard. Now, the thing that pissed me off the most in this episode, perhaps unsurprisingly, we're back to the Lady Sherlock, right, and her skills and whatnot. Which, you know, like the first scene with her is more or less her just questioning Harrison, and that's fine. It's whatever. There's some holes in his story. He doesn't want to admit that he's staying in the hotel, so he kind of lies about having a one-night stand, so he doesn't have to give an address. Which oddly neatly kind of like gives him an out later, because later on when they're convinced they know that he did all this stuff and they describe it quite accurately, he has an out. He says, I'm sorry, I do have something to confess. I stay at the hotel. I'm technically homeless and someone helps me stay here, because all of that's true, and his friend, she can corroborate it, which is what happens. So all of a sudden he has like a plausible reason why he was lying. And not only that, it's not, he was lying in some ways to protect someone else, which makes it look more noble than it otherwise might. So, you know, very convincing all in that front. And I don't think that was done too bad. It was kind of obvious that's where it was going, but I can't really fault that too much. What I didn't like was in between the scene where she questions Harris, and then later on when they're accusing him of stuff and he eventually admits at least the truth, other than the fact that he did the killing, is that there's a scene where she goes investigating around the hotel. She's back in the super clean bathroom, and she starts thinking about, okay, where could the killer have disposed of the body? Where could he have cut him up? So on, so on. And do you remember, kind folk, you might not, you probably didn't see it actually, because not that many people did, but back in 2015, there was a movie that came out called Fantastic Four, or Fanforstic, as it actually said on the poster. And one of the many things in that movie that I remember making fun of is that they tried to give the characters these like quirks, these little character traits, but they felt really awkward and forced. And one of them was that the Invisible Woman, Sue Storm, played by Kate Mara in that movie, when she was going to do super smart, sciencey computer stuff, or like mathematics on the computer, whatever it was, I don't remember too specifically, her gimmick was that she had to put on headphones and listen to music, and like not anyone else. And they treat it like this big deal where the headphones come on, kind of like a superhero cape going on. So the headphones are coming on, she's about to do her thing. So the scene here where she says she's going to go for a walk and her partner just knows it's time for the headphones and puts the headphones on her head, and Staying Alive by the Bee Gees starts playing as she walks through the hotel looking for clues. Apparently her Sherlock abilities enhanced by the music. This is such a try-hard lame trope to be quirky, and like I hated it. I hated everything about this. And I don't think it's the actress's fault. The actress is fine. She's doing what she's been given. But like, just all of her like quirks and like how, you know, just how of a savant she is with catching details, and then like this music thing especially. I was kind of over everything else. I was just kind of like, whatever. Like, this is what she is now. But this music thing sent me into a tizzy where I was just kind of like laughing like, or not laughing, but like kind of like smirking to myself about how stupid it was the entire time it was playing out. And she eventually ends up at the kitchen. She kind of deduces the elevator. They must have went down because they avoided cameras and so on and so on. And then deduces that, yeah, they must have cut up the body in the kitchen. And the part that really caught me off guard, in the sense that I was surprised they hadn't already figured this out, is that when they're in the kitchen, she sees the bin bags, the garbage bags, and she notices it's the same bags that were at the dump with the body. It was the same bags as the initial discovery of the crime scene. And she's like, it's the same bags, but look, they're tied differently. I thought this was really strange. Maybe not the tied differently part, because it's like, okay, the regular staff don't tie them like that, so it's someone who's not normally tying the bags. That's a fine point, whatever. But the idea that she goes, look, it's the same types of bags with the same red kind of, the red string that ties them. I'm like, wouldn't that be like one of the first things they check when they like find this location? Because it was like the one tangible thing they had along with the body was the type of bags that were being used. You would think that when they trace this all back to the hotel, that one of the very first things that they would look at just to sort of like connect some dots would be the one thing they had at the other crime scene, which would be the bags. So it felt really strange to me that it's like days into the investigation of her going around questioning people, looking at security cameras, having her savant moments, and then now she's only just saying, hey, look, it's the same trash bags. That felt a bit weird to me. But I mean, whatever. She produces all this. Conveniently, the camera that is on this employee exit where the bins go out is covered in bird shit. So luckily, Harrison didn't get seen on that camera ever. So that's kind of where we leave that stuff off on. The notable things here, other than that, of course, is that Harrison and his friend are getting close. Elsa is her name. They have kind of their date. Dexter even considers like going to see him, but sees that he's with a woman, sees that he seems to be quite happy. They kind of hit it off a little bit. Harrison asks about the son's father, and they seem to be bonding well. She lets him sleep on the couch. It feels like things are brewing. It feels like a healthy relationship is brewing. However, when she has to corroborate his story that she's letting him stay in some of the unused rooms every night, she does feel a little bit pissed that she had to admit that. But she was willing to do so because she wanted to make sure the police knew that Harrison would never do anything, violent. Obviously, she's wrong. But, her anger in that final scene was a little bit weird to me. Like, I get why she's, like, worried and concerned that if they tell her boss that she's going to be fired because, she's put in a lot of effort to, be good at this job, to have sort of a future here kind of thing. And one, it was weird that Harrison didn't tell her that the police promised not to report, whoever he said. Because he said that when they said, can anyone corroborate your story? Harrison's first response is, I don't want to get someone in trouble. And they kind of assured him that they won't, right? They don't care, right? I mean, the savant detective like listed the exact violation they would be reporting, and it's not her department, so whatever. So it's weird that Harrison didn't bring that up. But, I thought it was strange, though, she got kind of like, not angry, but like, the scene kind of de-escalated when she came out. She was a little bit pissed that she had to admit all this stuff, and she's worried about the boss finding out. But she kind of like changed her tone when she said, but I had to make sure they knew you wouldn't do that. Like, almost as if it was like a sweet moment that was coming in where it was like, no, but like I had to be honest because I wasn't going to let you be a suspect in a murder because the idea that she cares about him, she thinks he's a good person, all that stuff. But then he kind of says, you didn't have to do that. And she's like, I know. And she's kind of like mad again. I don't know. It felt a little bit strange. It felt like the scene was going down we've just kind of been through something slightly traumatic together. And like, you've just lied, or not lied, but you've just told the truth for me, even though it puts you at risk. It felt like maybe it should have been more of a bonding moment. But the episode wanted to leave them in like a bit of a rift. Maybe because they want to like try and have them mend it next episode. They want Harrison to come and try and talk to her, and maybe it'll be awkward next episode or something. So I guess what I'm really saying here is that this final scene felt like it was natural to a point, but then felt like I could feel the TV writers come in and skew it in such a way to leave it in a specific place so that they could do whatever they want to do next episode, and it felt unnatural by the end because of that. I think that's what I'm really trying to say about this scene. So yeah, so that was that plot. It's it's fine. The only other critique I'd maybe throw at it is that maybe there's one too many. Well, I say one. There's several too many little flashbacks to the murder. When they're telling him what they think he did, it keeps like flashing back to him doing the crime and all the little bits. Just these little 1 second snippets every so often. I didn't really need all that. It just kind of felt like it was, stale over substance at a certain point, like padding almost. It's not the only TV show that's guilty of doing that, though. It's a pretty common critique I have of some shows where they do too many little flashbacks like that. But, otherwise, mostly fine, but with some caveats about how it kind of skews the character relationship at the very end to leave them on a cold note. Uma Thurman's one scene, she's preparing a dinner for VIPs. Turns out that's what the invitation was at the start, or in the first episode. And I did notice, for the record, that when we saw the trophies of the killer, which are all driving licenses, I did remember, I did think, oh, wait a minute, isn't this the place where she broke into the first episode? I think this is how they're connecting the two plots. And sure enough, before this guy dies, he actually does tell Dexter, wait, you're the person who left that invitation and the money with my trophies. You take it back, you can have it. He thinks Dexter's from this mysterious third party, this organization, this or eccentric billionaire who loves to fund serial killers or whatever this is. So it does feel like a sort of turning point in the season, in that we've kind of wrapped up this introductory Dexter's getting back into the kill game, and we've set up kind of this weird new plot for him to go down, which is he's going to impersonate this killer so that he can go to this VIP serial killer dinner. And, is he going to try and kill the rest of them eventually? Is this going to be him building like a weird hit list of all the other guests? That could be something. Like I said, I mean, when we saw like her scene last episode, Thurman, I did think, oh, this feels like a silly concept, but I at least appreciate that it's something, like it's something big and weird. And I kind of feel the same way still. Like, I don't necessarily think it's going to be good or anything that I consider well written, but at the very least, it's something. It's not just typical Dexter. The idea that someone is bringing together 6 serial killers to a fancy dinner party so they can discuss their killings openly with each other, at least is kind of a crazy idea. So, I mean, if nothing else, Trainwreck TV at its schlocky finest, I suppose. As for Dexter's, story throughout the episode and the kill, it's a lot of what you expect for the most part. He has to order some of his ingredients and drugs and stuff that he uses for his various, parts of his process. We see that he's sucking as a rideshare driver, which once again, our main man Blessing is the nicest man in New York and gives him a bunch of advice and shows him how to be prepared for the customer's needs. He has like a big sort of bag that has bottles of water, snacks, condoms, just a bunch of stuff that a guest or a passenger, in this case, not I guess the hotel, what they might need. And again, he's just very pleasant. In fact, his daughter ends up giving Dexter acupuncture because he is kind of suffering a little bit. He's still recovering from the coma and has some pain, and ultimately it gets recommended. So it was quite obvious what they were going to do here, and it explains, I mean, maybe they mentioned this before, but it does explain why there's that very similar table to his kill table in that apartment, because this used to be her place, and she's an acupuncturist, and he's lying on there as she's giving him acupuncture and, talking about her relationship with her dad and how much she loves him, which obviously relates to how Dexter's thinking about his son. But yeah, the obvious thing that we're going to do is have Dexter at least make one crack about, I'm not used to being the one lying on the table, and sort of like being the vulnerable one, even though obviously she's no threat. She's an acupuncture, unless you're scared of needles, I suppose. But it's it's him hearing someone talk about the relationship with her father, which obviously is something he's thinking about a lot. He's talking to Harry about it. He's almost going to talk to Harrison, but decides not to because, Harrison's got someone that he cares about in his life. Maybe he doesn't need me there as well. So we've left that off for now. And given that he's maybe going to go do this VIP dinner thing, I mean, it could be episodes before he even tries to see Harrison again. Harrison may need to get in some serious trouble before Dexter comes swinging in on the rope to save him. If that's indeed how they end up meeting up again, it may not be. We could do a number of different things. But, you know, we see him check out the killer's place, and it is the apartment of a serial killer in that there's no cameras, there's a keypad on the door, you know, the lock. You know, there's just various Dexter reminiscing about having his own place and the privacy that he used to have. They set up very early on that outside the front of Blessing's house there was like a camera looking out, just a security camera. So Dexter, whenever he's entering his home, is walking past the camera. That seems very important. It makes it feel like he can never take someone, like a victim, back to his place. Unless he gets creative with how he gets in there. Also, the wife of Blessing did a background check on him and just wants to know why he's got 10 missing years. And he just says he lost some people, wanted to start over, yada yada. He doesn't really go into any real details about his past, of course. I thought it would have been interesting if he brought up that he was a forensic expert and, you know, maybe left that life because someone he knows got murdered. That may have been like a lot of sympathy. And there's a lot of sympathy from Blessing. Blessing's constantly like hugging him and saying that's a tragedy. Honestly, Blessing's the best character in the show right now. The way he reacts when he finds out Dexter's only got a 4.2 rating on the rideshare app, he's like, oh, this is a tragedy. We have to fix this. He's hugging him and he's like, come to me before you take any more passengers. We have to do this. I did like the Dexter's whole plan to get the killer involved wearing a turtleneck, because obviously we know the killer strangles with a razor wire and ultimately cuts into the neck. So I appreciated the turtleneck just as like a bit of protection, and then he obviously went one step further and had the sheet of metal underneath so that he wouldn't be at risk of the wire, at least until the killer realizes that there's something blocking it. Although I will question just slightly if it's cutting into the metal, and it looks like it is because you can see a bunch of like sort of marks on the metal when he takes it out. Wouldn't like half like the turtleneck be like hanging off? Like, wouldn't it be like kind of cut and destroyed? It looked very intact still for the most part, despite the fact that there was like scraping and like sort of like, you know, just marks all over the metal that was underneath. It's a minor quibble, but it's just something that, you know, popped out of my head as I was watching the scene. There's a lot of tension as he's trying to like fight back against them though, because he had his syringe with the sedative in it, and he dropped it down beside the seat, so he's kind of reaching around for it while he's trying to make small talk, and then while he's getting strangled, he's trying to reach for it. It's a whole thing, but ultimately, you know, succeeds and gets him onto his table at this guy's place. He uses this guy's place as the kill room, which wasn't uncommon for Dexter, if I recall. He quite often liked to use the killer's like place as the scene of the crime. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. You know, I mean, obviously it ends up connecting to all the VIP stuff, which has been teased. And, you know, Dexter's like curious about it. He clearly wants to check it out. The dark comedy bit comes at the very end when he realizes there needs to be like a thumbprint for entry, and he has to rush back to the furnace that he put the body bags into and cut off the thumb, which is how the episode ends. Which reminds me, actually, I thought it was strange that the title, Dexter Resurrection, appeared immediately at the start of this after the previously on. I don't think it did that in the previous episodes. And the reason why I thought it was especially strange is normally you get a little bit of a tease of what the episode is, and then it'll go to the title on like a quirkier, dramatic moment, like a little cliffhanger. And what I thought was strange is that there was a moment that felt like it was the right moment to cut to the title at the start. It's when Dexter basically looks at the camera at one point after he says something ominous. I think it's when he gets back to the house and he gets back to his place, and he's like, oh, you know, I think he says something cheesy like, you know, imposter, you know, your number's up, or your body's like ready for my table, something like that, something cheesy about killing him. And he looks at the camera, and it just cuts to the next scene, and I thought, surely that was the moment where the title should have come up, right? I don't think it was a great line or anything. Honestly, it kind of reminded me of the cheesy line at the end of the last episode that I thought was a bit lame. But it still felt like it was built for the title screen. So I don't know, strange. I said earlier, Batista had a couple of scenes. He has one where he talks to the cop in the town, finds out that Dexter's in New York. Just plot advancement. He isn't back in Miami, so we get an excuse to have a cameo of a couple of other characters, whose names are Quinn and Masuka. Oh, that sounds familiar. I remember Masuka. I remember Quinn's face. I couldn't have told you his name for the life of me. But they come to see him, and we find out Batista's retiring. He's retiring so he can go hunt Dexter, and he doesn't tell them what he's doing. He just says he's got something that he needs to finish. He needs to deal with something personal. So they hug, they have a drink. It is whatever. I'm sure some Dexter fans are like excited to see a couple of the old faces. It's funny to me though, because a lot of the old faces that were more memorable were the ones who died because they had bigger plot lines in the original show. And this is kind of the C team to an extent. It's just the comic relief guy who always makes dirty jokes. And of course, they had to have Masuka, who always made dirty jokes constantly. We had to have him referencing OnlyFans, because OnlyFans didn't exist when the original show existed, so he has to reference the new dirty thing. Because, I know. Of course they had to do that. Not that this is egregious, like all the stuff in Dexter's head in episode 1. That was way more painful to sit through. That was way more tedious. This is still, don't get me wrong, this is still a little nostalgia pop. This is still a little bit of fan service, but at least it's not as unnatural. It's like, okay, they still work at the police with him. They're saying goodbye. I still don't like Batista's plot. I'm not excited about Batista coming back into the plot. I hope he kind of stays away from it for as long as possible. I was kind of hoping he wouldn't find out that he had to go to New York until like episode 8 or something like that. Not because I necessarily dislike Batista, really. I've said it in every review so far. I'm so sick of like people Dexter knows sort of starting to figure out and like try to like investigate him. It was done so many times that I'm just not excited about it at all. Anyway, is that everything? I think that's everything. It's everything I feel like I want to talk about. Yeah, it's it's not the worst thing ever, but I don't think it's that good either. Like it just feels like, oh, Dexter's back. And I got the feeling as well that when he was setting up the table and he's like, oh, I missed the sound of the cellophane opening, and I missed the sound of this and all that. It got me thinking that did the sequel series that it did before, was it New Blood, what it was called? Did he never do a kill table in that show because he was trying to like go straight and whatnot? I don't know if he did or he didn't, but this kind of felt like to me, just from the context of how he was acting and talking, that this was like a return, and maybe something that fans were disappointed about with that show is that they never got Dexter just becoming full Dexter again. Whereas here, no, he's full up hunted a killer, he's put him on the table, he's done his whole thing. Everything except the blood slide, which I think he stopped doing in the original show at one point for reasons. But anywho, that's the show. I think I did this next. I was tempted to do something else before I got back to Dexter, but I think I want to just get caught up just so that I'm, it's easier to just gotta stick to this for a couple of episodes and get caught up. So let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff helps out a bunch if you do. And of course, if you want to support the content and the shows and help keep it all coming, both here and over at MailFuzz Movies, where the movie podcast live, you can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us and get some bonus content. You can also become a YouTube member, which also helps. I recommend Patreon because you get stuff for both channels that way, but if you want to specifically be a YouTube member here, that is greatly appreciated. Thanks to everyone who does already support all the content. And that is me. Thank you very much for joining. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?